Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. So I'm excited to show you how to do these little mini cab wraps. These little flat back cabs are amethyst, and each one measures between 7 to 9 millimeters. They are round, and obviously their back is flat. You can also do this with a faceted stone or an oval stone, and it's important that you have some width on the girth of the stone because you're going to need to be able to get your wires around. We're going to be tucking and curling them. There are many different ways to do this wrap. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. If you follow my YouTube tutorials, then you know I always plug the ancient art of wire, and it predates the Phoenicians by 5,000 years. Also, everybody, I'm doing an awesome holiday sale. All of my designs are up to 60% off, and you get one of these lovely little free cabs, so you get this for free with a minimum purchase of $150. They're also available for purchase, and they're on sale for $55 each. So reach out to me if you have any questions or interest in that. So I wanted to show you just different size cabs. So here's a faceted pear-shaped citrine. And you can do this same exact wrap with the citrine. So this is the back, and this is the front. So you can do the same thing with a faceted gemstone, and these are just different sizes. You can do it with an oval, that's a Larimar, or rounds. So let's get started. So if you're doing a mini cab and you're not going to be doing a large cab, you can do this on any size stone. You will measure your stone. So if I'm going to do this labradorite, I can tell that it's bigger than the other cabs that I used. And this labradorite comes in at exactly 10 millimeters. So we've got a 10 millimeter labradorite. And then this cab that I bought several of these is coming in at 9. So it's a little bit smaller. This one looks a lot bigger because it's highly domed. You see how thick that is? And then this oval, if I measure the length of it, comes in at 10 millimeters. So for a 10 millimeter or less cab, you're going to need to use, let me get my little cap so I don't lose my stones here. You're going to need to use 7 inches of wire. You can use square or round, or oval, or faceted. And you're going to cut yourself 7 inches of round or square wire, 20 gauges. It can also be, if you're going to make matching earrings, these would be absolutely adorable as earrings. I personally would make the bail smaller, so then I can just put a little jump ring in and then my ear hook. So if you're going to do that, I would recommend, if you're going to make earrings, that you do a little bit of each on each stone at the same time so that you can maintain symmetry. I'm always going to be giving you so many tips and techniques to accelerate your journey in this ancient art of wire. So we're going to measure, well, I already cut that. So we're going to center the stone, not the stone, the wire, sorry you guys. And I'm just going to move over here to my mat, and I cut that a little short. So let me recut it. So I've decided to use my labradorite because I think it's really helpful when you're learning how to do this the first time, that you have good width on the girth of your cab. So I've centered my 20 gauge round. Now, if you were going to use sterling, for those of you that use sterling, I use sterling too, but because of the tutorial, I'm going to be using copper. I would probably use a 21 gauge because sterling hardens much, much faster than copper does, and it's more springy. So it's going to hold up the same as 20 gauge copper would. So I know that my stone, and let me give you another technique here, is almost 10 millimeters. It's coming in just a little shy of it, but we're going to say, for the sake of that, 10 millimeters. You want your loop that you're going to make around your stone to be smaller than the stone itself. So I use my caliper as a gauge, and I can see that this is bigger than the widest barrel on my 6-step bell making pliers. So I'm going to start with that, and I can always open it up. You can use a pencil, a dowel, a pen, depending on the size of your stone. So all I'm going to do is find the center of my wire, and then I'm just going to squeeze the legs very close to the barrel, and I'm going to cross them over. Then I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to put my stone behind the wire, and that's perfect. That's actually perfect. If you notice, the stone cannot fall through. So that's the back of the cab. And if I have it back here and I push, it's not going to pop through. So what I'm going to do is, and it's a little fiddly if you've never done this before because you're wrapping this cab this way, you're going to push the legs, so where the cross is, you're going to push them in. So let me do this without my stone now, and I'm just going to hold the frame of the loop, and I'm just going to use my finger just to push these down a little bit. And you don't want it too small either, meaning just as long as your stone isn't falling out. So my stone can't fall out of there. So now I'm going to hold the frame very firmly, and I'm going to get my petite nose or needle nose pliers, and right below the X, oops, wanted you to see that. I'm going to hold super firmly, and I'm going to squeeze the legs together like we do when we're making a bail. So you should have something like that. Then I'm just going to pop my stone back there, and that's perfect. I've got it sitting on the girth, and it's hard to show you this. Now you can always stretch it out a little bit if you wanted to, but that looks pretty good to me. I'm hoping this 7 inches is enough because that stone is really thick. It should be. If not, I'll do it again. So now I'm going to be using half round wire. We're going to create our bail. And you can use weaving wire. You can weave your bail. And I'm going to wrap up about 3/4 of an inch. And I don't think what I have over here, got a bunch of scrap wire, is going to be long enough. That won't be. So I'm going to have to work off my spool, and I don't think that's going to be long enough either. So let's get this all out of the way. I'm going to be working with 22 gauge half round wire, pardon me. And if you haven't used half round wire before, there's a flat side and a dome side. So let's see. So this is the flat side. And what they've done is they've taken a piece of 22 gauge wire and they cut it in half. And this has got a slightly curved dome. It's not very obvious unless you're using 18 gauge wire. So I'm going to work off my spool here. I need to get this in a direction to where I'm not going to twist it. And you're going to want to leave a tail, and I'll show you that in a second. So I'm just going to start wrapping, and I'm going to do 3/4 of an inch. I don't want it to be a big, huge bail for me because it's a small, petite mini pendant. So I'm just going to wrap. Let's not twist this. So I'm going to move this up a little bit and tighten my wraps. And I need about a 1.5 inch tail at the most. So I'm going to stop here. That looks about 2 inches. I don't need that much. Then I'm going to slide it down. Leave my tail out there. And I know I don't have 3/4 of an inch yet, but let's go ahead and measure. So I'm at exactly 1/2 inch, so I'm just gonna do a little shy under 3/4. So I'm just gonna continue wrapping by turning my frame, holding tension against the wire, and spinning it around. So let's measure that. So just a couple more. I think that will be good. Now again, if you're going to be making earrings, I would count your wraps. So here's another tip to make sure that you have the same amount of wraps. And then as you're shaping your bail, which we're going to do in just a second, shape both bails at the same time. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim this half round off. And I'm gonna come back further away from the outside core wire because I don't want my wire to lift up. And then I'm just gonna roll it and tap it down. I'm rolling off that wire and tapping it down. So now I'm gonna get my flat nose and I'm just going to gently tap these wires down. I'm not squeezing really hard, but you'll feel the wire very gently kind of push in. Now you could also use, here's another technique, a rubber mallet if you wanted, and just tap this wire with the rubber mallet. You have to be careful. You don't want to use too much pressure. I do that especially when I'm working with thicker gauge. So let me give you an example. I'm making a ring here, and this is an 18 gauge half round. You can certainly see how different they are. So that's an 18 gauge. So before I created my ring band, I tapped this wire with a rubber mallet. And so on this ring that I made, I used a 20 gauge half round. And you can certainly see the difference there. So there's 22, 20, and 18 gauge. Isn't that amazing? And it creates an entirely different look. So here's my pretty little ring. It is a big ring. It will look great on somebody with really long fingers. I don't have super long fingers, but I love it. So anyways, so let's get going. So now, let me just clean this up. What we're going to do is we're going to make our bail. So I'm going to, and I want to make sure that everything is balanced. Nothing's pitched off on an angle. Gonna get my stone in there, and that's perfect. That's not gonna fall out at all. And I'm going to bend my bail right, I'm gonna put my thumb right where the wraps end, and I'm going to bend it towards me. Now you can use a tool. I'm gonna use my thumb, and I'm gonna come below the center. So here's a really good idea. When you're first starting, I would really get in the habit of measuring. It really will help you a lot. So I would measure how long this was and mark it with a Sharpie. If I know that that's the middle, I'm gonna come below the middle because you're gonna lose length as you're bending your bail around. So I'm gonna come below the middle and just slowly start to turn that bail around. Then I'm just gonna bring it around the back, and I'm gonna push the legs down. So you should have something like that. Then I'm going to push the legs up. You can use your pliers or you can use your hand. I do both. And I'm gonna rock those legs up like this. Then I'm gonna push my bail back down. And then I'm gonna make sure that everything's lined up. And we're looking at center here. And I'm going to spread my wires out, and I'm going to do that with my finger. You can use a round nose. I'm just going to do it with my finger. So I'm going to spread them out. Now at this point, and I want to show you, if you were going to do a faceted stone, obviously this isn't shaped properly for this pear shape. This is the front and this is the back. As I mentioned, I'm always going to give you techniques. It's the same concept, but your loop is obviously going to be smaller. So here's the back of this faceted. And then you'll see what I mean when we wrap this flat back cab. You'll be shaping this around the girth of this faceted teardrop. So I'll show you here in a minute. So now we're going to put our cab in, and this is where it might get a little fiddly for you, just to see the spacing that we're going to need. And I'm going to push my cab into this wire. I'm literally kind of stretching it out a little bit. Okay. And I have lotion on my hands, and they're very slippery. Let me see if I can. Shouldn't have done that, especially with wire. I need sandpaper now. So I'm going to bring these wires down, and I'm kind of arcing them a little bit, making it like a basket, if you will. Then I'm going to put my stone back in. You're going to have more control now because you have something bracing in the back. So you should have something like this. So now I'm going to turn these legs in. Wrong pliers. I'm going to turn them in right at the edge of the stone. And they're just going to cross over. And I'm going to straighten back my bail because I can see that it's pitching forward. Holding the frame of the loop and straightening that back. So my stone can't fall out of there, okay? So I'm going to take my stone out. And I'm going to squeeze the legs, and we're going to be opening this up a little bit more in the back because it's going to bring in this frame a little bit. So you can do this two ways. You can either grab where you pinched in and straighten the leg, or you can squeeze it. So let's do it this way because I think it will be easier for you. I need to get in a better working position. You want to be careful not to tweak your frame, okay? So let's open this up and make some adjustments. We'll want to make sure everything's centered up. Don't worry about your legs down here. We're going to straighten those up in a minute. Just creating a curve because this is going to protect the back of the stone. It's going to capture it. And where your legs are meeting together, it should be right at the base of your loop. So I'll show you what I mean here. So see how they're pinching in right there a little bit, and they're meeting right here. So I'm going to put my stone back in just to see how everything's looking. If I need to make any adjustments, my hands are so slippery from the lotion. And it can be wider. On these, I did them more open, but we're going to be covering that. I'm just hoping I have enough wire because this stone's a lot thicker than I anticipated when I cut my wire. Okay. So I'm going to hold my legs right here. And I'm just going to open these up around the neck a little bit more. So I'm working where the neck is. So we have this little basket here. So now what we're going to do, and I'll be using scrap wire, is we're going to wrap the legs. And again, you can weave them if you don't want to use half round. And I'm just going to come up and wrap my legs. And you're only going to need about 3 wraps, maybe 4. So let's see what we got here. That's going to be plenty. So I'm really cranking down on this wire here, this half round wire, because I'm going to come up underneath it. I'm going to trim it off. And cinch it down. And I want these wires good and tight. Really want them cinched onto those 2 legs. And I'm going to cut the wire on the inside. So this is the back, and this is the inside of this wire, because we're going to be wrapping it over, so we're going to be hiding that cut. Then if you have trouble trimming your wire, don't be afraid to lift up on it. Just lift up on it so you can get up underneath it. And I'm really cinching that down. It's gonna slide. It's the nature of it, especially when it's 22 gauge, half round. I just want it to really be as tight on those wires as possible. See how I can push them? Okay, so let's get our stone in here. So now we're going to set the stone. So I'm going to slip this in here. My hands are so slippery. Okay, you want to make sure that everything's center, but we'll make adjustments as we go. So this is the fiddly part. Make sure that your half round is slid down, and then you're going to roll the legs up. So let's line everything up. So I can see that it's off center a little bit. Always turn your work around so you can see how everything is setting. See if it's even, that everything's centered and lining up. And we can make adjustments as we're going. So if it gets a little fiddly for you and you can't do this, and you know, when I first learned this technique, it was 4 years ago. I started 4.5 years ago, and I had a heck of a time. So I taped. So once you get to this point, you can take a little bit of tape and tape around the entire piece, and then pull it off after you set your stone. So now what we're going to do is the same thing. We're going to separate these legs. Now you could pop your stone out and do this. So now I'm going to I'm holding extremely firmly. one wire all the way over. It's almost if they're parallel, and another wire. Now line them up, so you should have something like this. And you'll have more control over your stone at this point. So you want to start centering everything up. Now, you have a couple of options. Let me show you what I mean. I'm just centering this up. So let's go ahead and wrap our bail. So this is why we left this tail wire. I almost forgot about this guy. And we're just going to take that excess wire and come around and secure the bail together. And then I'm going to feed it through this gap. So let me show you. Let me get a tool so I can show you what I mean. So that half round wire that we have on the bail is coming around, and I'm going to feed it through this gap right here. And I don't need this much wire, so I'm just going to cut some off. And I'm going to roll it through the gap. And you can see it come, oops, it's coming out the other side, which is not what I want, but actually that will work. Let's do that. So you can see it coming out. Hold very firmly and rock that wire in. Now let me turn it around and make sure I didn't mess up my front. I'm going to start tightening this up because I saw that there was a little bit of a gap in there. Hold your piece very, very firmly. Just rolling that wire in a little bit tighter. There we go. I just felt it cinch in. Fiddling with it a lot, but that's what I do. I'm going to cut it really close. So there's just a little bit of nibby sticking out there. And I'm just going to roll it against that core wire. So now we've captured our bail. Now you should have a lot more control over holding and supporting your stone. I'm pushing these in. So I want to tell you what I was thinking of as I was doing this with my other pieces. So I wanted to show you, you can elaborate on this so much. So on this one, I've got the wires coming around the girth of the stone on the bottom, and then we're going to be swinging them around to the back and connecting them. I used one piece of half round and connected. I wrapped over here, came over at the top, and wrapped over here. You can connect down here if you want. Just depends on what kind of design you want. So on this one, I connected these two down here to the frame of the stone. So it's the same concept or not. So I'm going to swing that up. I want to make sure that this is nice and center because I'm seeing it in the back off on an angle. So I'm going to get my flat nose and I'm going to correct that. And I'm going to turn this up, kind of turning it in a little bit. I need it more center. There we go. We have good center now. So you can do that. You can connect your half round wire slipping up underneath these two legs. And it may be easier for you to have more control. Well, let's go ahead and do that. So let me show you that technique, because we're going to be using our half round the entire time. Now, if you can't get up underneath this wire here, the frame wire that's going around the stone, you need to lift it up a little bit. And that can be a little tricky if you're not used to it. You need a very sharp implement, or tool, and you're just going to lift it up so that you can get that half round underneath there. This is a wood carving tool that I have in my kit. I used to do a lot of traditional Native American industry. You need to make sure that the edge of your half round is really clean. And so I made flutes out of bamboo and cedar. I've done a lot of different things. My friend of mine for 30 years that has moved over to the other side taught me all his Native American Lakota Cherokee traditional industry to his people. So anyways, now we're just going to connect. And you don't want to pull too hard because your stone isn't completely set yet. So you want to hold things very, very firmly. Let's go ahead and pull from this side. My hands are so slippery, you guys. I'm so sorry. I should probably just pause this and get up and wash them so I can stop feeling like I'm slipping off my piece. Okay, I'm going to get more control now. There we go. Just snugged her right in. And I'm just working it through. So what we're doing is we're connecting it down here. We're going to have a little bit more of a V shape on this one. That's why I recommend when you're doing earrings that you match them up. Okay. This is way too much half round, so let me cut this back. I'm not sure if I want to do 3 wraps or 2, so I'm going to wrap this side too. Let me make sure everything's centering up. A little bend on this wire. You'll start to feel that you have so much more control over keeping your stone in place once you start connecting. I don't really want my design here to be full of wraps, but you can. It's just personal preference. So I'm tightening those in. So let's see, do I want to do 2 wraps or 3? I'm going to leave it at 2. That's plenty. We're going to be connecting it in the back. So I'm doing the wiggle jiggle. I'm going to actually snap this half round. I've got plenty of length to do it, and I'll snap it clean off. I want to make sure that these are good and snug. Holding extremely firmly. I emphasize, you don't want to, pull things out of place. Now I'm going to wait to snap these because I don't want to be lifting up on that frame until I secure them in the back. So here's what you should have. Then you want to check your back. And I can see that I'm not completely center here. And that's just simply going to be shifting my stone a little bit. And I can be able to do this better when I don't have all these wires in my way. and shifting my neck. And that centered it up beautifully. Let's turn it around. Good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to swing this wire here over the girth of the stone, like we're making a little loop. And I've got plenty of wire. And then we're going to follow the inside of that frame wire. And we're going to let these wires come near the neck. And roll it over towards the front of the bale. So you can have something like that. So we're really capturing the stone now. Slide those down. So same thing over here. We're going to come up over the shoulder. I want to make sure I'm centered here. Then I'm going to follow the frame that's framing the back of the cab. And I'm going to push this towards the front, and I have plenty of wire. So if you have a 10mm cab, 7 is perfect. I was just a little concerned how thick it was. I thought I might be losing a lot of length. So let's line this up. So you should have something like that. So now I feel safe enough to go ahead and snap these if I can. If not, I'll cut them. There we go, clean off, nice clean. I gotta get a different grip on this. Holding super firm. You do not want to stretch or pull your wire away from your stone. Okay, beautiful. So let me share some other techniques with you. If you're working with a larger cab, you can absolutely go off on this design. So what I mean is you can actually bring these wires, and they're going to need to be longer. You can follow down and around and shape and make a beautiful little swirl down here. You can bring them down and back over the back. It's amazing how far you can go with this. There are so many different techniques that you can use on creating this wrap. So now we're going to connect the back. Okay, so we're going to be putting in our half round wire. You can either use one wire and wrap 2 or 3 times here, bring that wire up and over, and then wrap it up underneath 2 or 3 times, and you'll end up with this technique. So I wrap 3 times here. My wire's coming out, so it's always going to come up and over, meaning the half round dome side is going to be facing up. And then I came back in and I wrapped 3 times under these 2. On this one, because the stone is much smaller and I had very much less space, I wrapped down on the bottom. And it's also because it's a different design. I created 2 little loops here, so that changed the way I was going to use my wire and how I was going to shape it to follow the frame on the base of the stone. So I really want to give you ideas. And on this one, they're wrapped up on top. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So again, everything's really tight in here now. So I need to come up and lift up underneath. That's why you need something sharp. See, I got that underneath there so that I have working room. I'm just going to gently turn my tool here on an angle just to make sure I have enough space. I'm not worried about this wire, it's the frame wire. And the same thing over here. Now I've got space there already. So, and that could have come from me lifting up on this side. It naturally lifted up. So I'm just going to double check again, make sure everything's centered up. I'm going to get my scrap wire. And this is way too long. That's too short. So let me cut this in half. You only need a couple of inches to do what you're going to do here. And I'm going to connect again. And if you find that you have trouble, so let me show you another technique. All you want to do is roll You just want to roll the tip so that the wire will tuck under. So we're just going to take this little tip here, and now it'll roll underneath these wires and come out in the middle. See what I mean? So now I'm going to fold this over because I only need a couple of wraps just to keep my half round from moving all around. And then I'm going to keep that roll on there so that I can just keep rolling it and feeding it through. I can feel my hand slipping because I got that dang lotion on there. So I'm going to do my rocking motion. And then I'm going to fold this down and I'm going to tighten it up from here. And I can feel the way that the wire is sliding that it's not tight enough. So before I continue any more wraps, I'm going to make sure that my first wrap is good and snug. And see what I mean? You really don't need very much. So I'm just going to feed this through. You're going to feel a lot more control now. Just really want to tighten this up before I cut it off. There we go. I could really feel that cinch down this time. And now I'm going to feed it through one more time, so I'm going to have 3 wraps. And you can leave it with 2. When you're rocking it like that, you really want to support the frame of your piece that you're working on so that you don't pull your wires out of shape. I'm just pressing down on there. And I'm holding the 2 wires at the neck. So I've got a hold of the bail, and my fingers around these 2 wires that are coming up right here so that it doesn't pull anything out of shape. Just making sure that these are super tight before I cut them. And then I'll do the other side and we'll be right back and we'll be done. So to really get up underneath that wire, and you've got a lot more room over on this side, you want to push it back a little bit so you can get way up underneath it. You need really sharp nippers. Those are my brand new ones. I finally, after 4 years, bit into my other ones. Just going to push that down and roll that tip up. That just tightens it more. Okay, so I will do this side and I will be right back. But this is what you should have. Isn't it darling? It's just so cute. You could actually wear it on both sides, gang. You really could. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've wrapped both sides. Got my 3 little wraps there. And what you want to make sure of is that this is good and flat, meaning where you have your wraps, that because you may have lifted up your wire, you want to make sure that it's pressed against the stone. So how we're going to do that is we're going to come off the tip of this and we're going to pull and pull it down towards the shoulder. So I'm holding super firmly and I'm pulling it down towards the shoulder. You want it good and tight against the base of your stone. And see what I mean, how you could wear this on the back as well. It would just be flat. It's a beautiful lab, and I'm seeing it in different lighting here as I'm getting that blue color flash. So right now you have a couple of options. You can decorate here simply by bringing these around and making a loop here, looping them towards each other in the middle. You can really go anywhere. You can totally elaborate. I'm just going to keep it elegant and simple. So I know that these are too long, so less is more. So I'm just going to take off some for right now. And there's just, I see a million things that you could do here. So just let your imagination carry you away. But what we're going to do is we're going to make a little swirl right here like we did on all of these. And we're going to connect it to the frame. And already this stone is as snug as a bug in a rug. It's not going anywhere. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this wire and I'm going to make a loop, and I'm going to use my finger, and I'm working off the tip as I'm pushing on the curl here, or the arc here of that wire until it comes flush with the frame wire. Okay, so this is our round loop on the front of the stone, and I'm just going to keep pushing it around until it's flush. So it's flush with this side. I can push it down behind it. So you got this little loop going. And we're going to do the same thing here, just arcing it, working off the tip, and then making sure that it's flush with this side. You want to make sure that they're even. Okay, so now we're just going to make continue the loop. I'm holding here. So where this is looping around and touching the side of the front of the frame wire, I'm just holding firmly. I'm just making my life easier. You can use your pliers. We're going to be trimming that off, but I want to connect them first before I do that. So just giving myself an advantage. And you shouldn't be feeling at this point your stone moving around at all. So we got these little loops coming out. Now, as before, this is so tight, I might have to lift up on this wire a little bit. And you can actually do that with your fingernail, or you can do it with your tool. And I'm just gonna make 2 wraps. I'm not gonna make 3. I don't want this, for me, I don't want my stone full of wraps, but you can. It's all about personal preference. And I'm just using my scrap wire here. And I'm going to see if I can get up underneath it. If I can't, I'm going to lift that wire up, and I can't. It's so snug here. So I'm going to do as I did before. I'm just going to lift up on this wire a little bit, and I'm doing it very gently. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it, just enough. I need to get this away from the stone, and I can feel myself as I'm coming up underneath it and creating enough of a gap that I can feed my wire through. And I can see now that I can. I've pulled it away. And then I'll push that back down. So I'm gonna go ahead, and you need a good sharp edge when we're working underneath that tight of space. It's really tight up at the neck, which is fine. I want it that way because I'm going to slide my wire up. I'm going to come close to the neck on this one. I'm going to fold my wire over so I have a good tail to hang on to. Slide it up, and I'm going to feed it through. So make myself a little loop. Still pretty tight. Let me get in a better working position. There we go. I'm just fiddling a lot, just lining everything up, then using my hands. Sometimes I find working with my hands, depending on what I need to do, is easier. So try whatever you need to do. Really want to roll that around those two wires there. It's not tight enough. Let's see, will that be good enough? I think so. Or do I want to do 3? I'm always thinking out loud. 3 will definitely change it up. Let's just leave it for that right now. I'll leave that half round on until I'm going to think about it when I do this other side, okay? And I'll be right back. Okay, so I decided on just the 2 wraps. I like the symmetry of 2 on top and 2 on bottom. So now we're almost done. This normally doesn't take an hour to do, but because I'm doing the tutorial and I want you guys to have a lot of detail and technique, it takes a little bit longer. So I'm going to just go ahead and roll these up, and that's going to really tighten everything against the stone. And same thing here, just going to roll it up, and then we're going to trim them. So this is going to tighten everything up really good. So I just want these loops to meet each other, meaning you can connect them, you can make them really tiny here. It's really up to you. So on these, I made them super, super tiny. These, I'm thinking about something different. So I think I'm just gonna roll them. I wanna make sure that they're the same length, and they are. So I'm just gonna come off the tip here, and I'm gonna roll it in to itself. So you should have something like that. And the same thing over here. Need to move that back a little bit. Going to roll it in, just working off the tip. So what we have here is protecting the girth of the stone on the side and over here as well. And then I just want to make sure everything's good and snug and our pendant is done. Isn't that cute? So really let your imagination soar. You can do anything you want. I'm going to line up a couple of things here that I'm seeing. Just want to make sure these are good and tight against this stone. This needs to come down over here a little bit. But it's really, really such a pretty little, really pretty wrap. I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. This should be your final piece or whatever you decided to do. And thank you so much for being a wonderful part of this magical ancient art of wire. I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. Have a wonderful, magical wire wrap day. Bye for now.